initially got you interested in Tai Chi? Were you one of those kids in the 70s who was in awe of Bruce Lee and martial arts, and that was the route?
Yeah.
I knew it.
Yeah. I can say all the Bruce Lee lines, you know. What is your art of fighting? My art of fighting is the art of fighting without fighting. Bullshit, Mr. Hangman. I can do all the lines from Enter the Dragon, you know. We used to go and watch the films and come out of the films and literally on the streets just be testing out all the moves. You know?
Bruce Lee was a superstar in the 70s, wasn't he? He was a pop star.
He really was. And his life story is so fascinating. I watched a film of his the other day. It's amazing. You can watch it on YouTube. It's of him when he's like 7. Damn, I forget what it's called now. But it is the first film that Bruce Lee made. And he's the star of the film. You know, there's a little bit of kung fu in it, but really it's about double dealing and thieves and stuff like that. Anyway, yeah, he was a star. And I think it was the kung fu which was important, but also he was like a minority, you know. It was like to see this Chinese cat just doing it. And I mean, do you remember the television program, Kung Fu? I mean, that should have been Bruce Lee, but they wouldn't cast the Chinese guy. I mean, they would make a film about Kung Fu and wouldn't cast the Chinese guy. Can you imagine you're going to make a film about punk and not cast a white guy or something?
They got a white guy who looks slightly Chinese to play the part of the Chinese guy, when they had an already super triple famous black arts, like a martial arts expert who's a superstar who could have been cast in it.
I mean, that shows you how deep racism can go, you know. And I guess I went to a karate school just to try and learn the basics, because karate schools were kind of popular then. And then I kind of gravitated towards Kung Fu. And then I realized that there's a spiritual side of Kung Fu. I mean, Bruce Lee alludes to it sometimes in his films. It's interesting, Enter the Dragon, there's a couple of cuts of it. And one of the most common cut is the cut that hasn't got the spirituality in it. And Hollywood found it a little bit too much. If you look at the long cut, where he starts by saying that he gets a little kid and he says to the kid, you know, look at the stars, you know, and then he says, you know, don't follow my finger. If you follow my finger, you'll miss the whole beauty of the universe and all that kind of stuff. I think it's because Western people tend to not understand what Kung Fu is. We're going to talk about Tai Chi, obviously, but Kung Fu, Tai Chi is a Kung Fu. Some people think it's not. It's a Kung Fu. Now, let me put it another way, sorry. To be more precise, it's a martial art. Kung Fu is the direct translation from Chinese is, it's got nothing to do with fighting. You can conduct an interview with Kung Fu. You do an exam with Kung Fu. You can work in the music industry with Kung Fu. It's your dedication to the art. Martial arts is just a way of expressing your Kung Fu. The best way of showing balance is to be able to do a kick with maximum force and still stay balanced, bring your foot in and still be able to hold your foot up. You know, you are expressing Kung Fu. It's just that martial arts is a good way of doing it. So I started to learn about the kind of, I hesitate to say the spiritual side, but it's the nearest word I have of Kung Fu. The discipline behind it. The idea that first of all you conquer the body and then you conquer the mind. You know, and there are cliche Bruce Lee quotes, but you know, the art of fighting without fighting is a really good one. When people say to me, what's your best Kung Fu move? I usually go, watch this one, I'll show you a great move, and then I run. You know, get away from the problem. You know, every good Kung Fu move should start with a block. You always presume that you're going to be attacked. You should never be the aggressor. So I was learning all that stuff. Now, I think it was around the year 2000, I was working in Hong Kong. And I'd do some gigs, and I finished the gigs, and I had some days off. You know, it's like when you tour, you got some days off, you go and fucking see the sights or whatever. Sorry, can I swear on your podcast?
We can edit.
And somebody said, look, we can go to the Chinese border and you can hand your passport over and you can go into China for a day. And I'm like, oh, great, yeah. So I've always wanted to go to China, you know, the home of Bruce Lee. It's a bit like being a reggae fan, you know, getting to go to Jamaica or something, you know. So I got to the border, handed my passport over. But the only downside was that I was with a group of tourists. You had to stay with these tourists. It was horrible. That was horrible. Yeah. Because listen to this, man. The first thing we did when we got into Guangzhou, China, was we went to a restaurant, and it was a cat restaurant. Oh, it looked like a pet shop. You looked at your cat, you picked your cat, and then in 15 minutes time it was on your plate. And I just stood there where all these tourists were just. I was just horrified. I couldn't do anything. We had to sit together, so I literally just stood in the corner of this restaurant, disgusted. But then we came out and we went to a couple of museums and everything, and then I just went, I've got to come back. And the next year I went back, and I actually went to the Shaolin Temple. Now, I don't know if you know what the Shaolin Temple is.
Yeah.
Right. It's like the home of Kung Fu. And we were there and we were practicing Kung Fu. I just went there. A friend gave me a contact there. I went there 1 year, I went there 2 years, and I went there for a few years afterwards. I just kept going there. And then one day I was talking to this monk, and he said to me, he said, if I had to pick any of the styles that we do here at Shaolin, I should explain that you have the monkey style, you have the snake style, you have the tiger, crane, all that kind of stuff. He said, if I had to pick any one of these styles, if I only had to pick one, it would be Tai Chi. And a friend of mine in London had said the same thing. And he was somebody that could do all styles. And I said to him, I said, why Tai Chi? And he said, because all the external Kung Fus, they're great while you're young and you can jump through the air and you got muscles and all that stuff. But Tai Chi, you get power internally. And as you get older and you get wiser and you relax more, you actually get more powerful. And people don't think it's Kung Fu. People think it's kind of a relaxing, hippie kind of floaty thing. And most people, especially in the West, don't understand it. But it's an internal martial art. In other words, you get your power from within, not from without, from the muscles.
So it's about two martial artists and Tai Chi.
Yes, yeah. So I thought to myself, if two of the greatest martial artists that I respect in London, in England, and in China, at the home of Kung Fu in the Shaolin Temple, can say that for them, Tai Chi is the ultimate martial art. There must be something in it. And then when I asked the guy in China, he said to me that, you know, this is an internal martial art. You don't need muscle. You don't need kind of external power. You get your power from within. You get your power from breathing and your relationship with your feet to the ground. When we do a punch in Tai Chi, it comes from the ground. It doesn't come from the shoulder. So you're punching somebody with the whole body rather than the shoulder and the arm. And also the health benefits, the way you learn to breathe low and full, really use your lungs. And the way it can only work if you're really relaxed. That's the ultimate. In Tai Chi, you're always going for relaxation. In Western ideas of self-defense, when you punch with a certain amount of tension and your muscles are tensed. In Tai Chi, you want complete relaxation. The more relaxed you are, the better. So I just went, I'm going to start doing Tai Chi. Now, I should say I did a little bit of what they call Yang Tai Chi many years before in London, just as a kind of bit of a hobby, but that's more relaxation Tai Chi. About 1 hour's drive from the Shaolin Temple, there's a place called Chenjiago. It literally translates as Chen, that's the family name, Jia, which means family, so you're saying Chen family, Go means like ditch or valley. The style of Tai Chi that I practice is called Chen Tai Chi. It originates there. They say this is the birthplace of Tai Chi, and it was only an hour away from Shaolin. People said, you know, if you want to learn, go there. That's the home of it. So I went there, and the first year I went there, I'm not a very good teacher, and I thought he was kind of just not very good. And I was a bit disillusioned, and I was leaving, and then somebody said, no, don't be disillusioned, I'll take you to a real teacher. And he took me to a guy, and this guy gave me a little lesson that took about 10 minutes. And I'd learned more in that 10 minutes than I'd learned in a year.
What did you learn? Was it just, is there a very core, not a secret, but an idea that just triggers the whole thing?
Yes. I mean, a lot of the time when people say, if I say to somebody I do Tai Chi, they kind of wave their hands like this. The hands are not that important, actually. What's important is your relationship with the earth. Are your feet rooted in the earth, and how do you move from the waist? So that when you do a punch or you do a move, it comes from the earth. This is the last thing. This follows everything else, the hands. And so he taught me some stuff about that and the way I was moving and the way I was breathing. And I went, this is it. And since then, how many years is that? It's, you know, more than 10 years. I go there every year. I didn't go last year because I was touring, and obviously not going this year. He doesn't speak English, but he's like a really funny guy. And I started to learn a bit of Chinese. It was interesting because at one point I had a Chinese girlfriend, and I used to spend a lot of time in China, and I had that kind of English arrogance. I speak English, everybody can bloody speak English. You know? But then when I'd have lessons with this guy, and everybody would fall about laughing, and I wouldn't understand. And everybody said he's really funny and wise at the same time. And I thought, I've got to learn Chinese to understand what he's talking about. I can't fully speak Chinese now, but I can understand some of the things that he's saying.
That's a discipline on its own. It's such a different vernacular.
Oh, yeah, Chinese. The language is very, very difficult.
So with Tai Chi, the core idea is building up your chi, your energy in your body, the burning fire, the internal fire.
Yeah, well, it's about kind of harmonizing that internal fire, that chi, that power, with your body and your mind. So the reason why we kind of go into a slight trance kind of mode, it looks like we're going into a trance, is because we're thinking about where our weight is on our feet. We're thinking about the position of our hips. We are trying to relax. We're letting our hands follow, but they've got to be really relaxed. Your hands have got to feel, when you do Tai Chi, when you move through the air, it should feel like wind blowing against you. That's how sensitive it should. It should be like if a fly landed on my finger as I'm doing Tai Chi, it should kind of slightly bend like a branch on a tree. And at the same time, I'm trying to be upright and breathe deeply, not breathe into the chest like most Westerners do, but breathe to a position which is about 2 inches below the belly button. So the only way to do that properly is to do it. So if you're doing it and you start thinking about your girlfriend or your dinner, you fall over. You know, you really have got to stay with it. And that's why people go into that kind of trance-like thing, because to do it properly, you've got to use all your faculties.
Yeah, I remember I actually did do it years ago, and the teacher was saying your body's like a tree, your legs are like the trunk and the roots, and your arms are like the branches. And she was a tiny woman, she was about 4'6", and if you tried to lift her off the ground, you couldn't. Yeah, yes. It's impossible because she was so rooted into the ground.
Yes. I remember a few years after I started, we brought a Chinese woman over to England. Actually, she also went to Manchester and Birmingham and places and did exhibition. And people just look at this little old lady doing her stuff. And I remember I think we were in Liverpool, and some Liverpool guy that obviously just come from the pub just went bullshit, you know. It's fixed because they got some guys to kind of attack her. And they were martial arts guys, and, you know, karate and people like that tend to pull back so you can see that they're going to punch. And she would just move away from them. And so some guys in the audience went, fake, fake. So she invited them down and said to her, all right, you attack me. And they came to attack her, but for her, they were much easier to defeat or defend against than the martial artists, because somebody who's doesn't understand fighting in martial arts terms tend to go around like this, And when they go round and make that circle, a martial artist just thinks, don't meet force with force. Just let them go. And if you don't need to do anything, don't do anything. So she would sometimes just slightly move to the left and the punch would go slightly. Because the other thing that you're doing, as you're doing Tai Chi, and this is the difficult thing, I haven't reached this level yet, you're slowing your heart rate down. So, you know, if me and you were talking, and we are talking like this, and I'm saying, Rob, I fucking hate you, you did this to me, you did that to me, we start to fight, my heart rate speeds up, your heart rate speeds up, and anybody who's watching, their heart rate speeds up. If you do Tai Chi, it should slow down. And you see everything almost in slow motion. That's a difficult position to get to. It's difficult to attain, you know? You're so relaxed that in the middle of a fight, you can just take your time, you see. And so that's why she looks slightly fake, because she doesn't go, you know, she just is relaxed and sees the punch come in. She thinks, I don't need to block down, I'll just move to the left a little bit, just move to the right a little bit. And you can see all these guys they just come from the pub and they're falling all over the floor, using their own energy. She's not doing anything, you know. It's a wonderful thing when you see that. But that's why it's called Kung Fu, because it's difficult to get to that point. It takes a lot of discipline, a lot of control, a lot of dedication. And a lot of these people, unlike me and you probably be able to do it 2 times a week, Monday and Wednesday, down the local community centre. They do it every day. If you go to Chenjago, people waiting for the bus start practicing Tai Chi. Kids do it in the playground. You know, grandparents do it, everybody do it. All families will have a slightly different take on Chen Tai Chi. And so, you know, they master it a lot better than we do. And it's a little bit like, because it also is a meditation. Now, if I said to you, close your eyes and meditate and think of nothing, which is what a lot of people in the West are told to do when they meditate, I guarantee you're going to think of the deadline for this piece, or, you know, you're going to think about, you know, yeah, exactly. Whereas if you're a monk and you've got no possessions and you live in a mountain or you live in a small village and you've got nothing to worry about, you can free your mind, exactly the monkey mind, to now just concentrate on not concentrating, if you like. I feel like I'm going on and you're not asking me questions.
Oh, because it's all interesting. I mean, what how's it affected you as a person, and maybe your art as well? Has it had an effect?
It's funny because it's the one thing I haven't been able to really write poetry about, and I've read some poems written by people like me. Talk about, when I say people like me, I mean people that are not the masters from Tai Chi, who are not absorbed in Tai Chi, just people that practice it and like it, and they're not very good poems, you know. I always say that it's a form of meditation, and I also do a seated meditation as well. And I always say that only in certain circumstances will I talk about it. And when I talk about it, I'll say that, look, I can only talk about it to a limited amount. There's a limit to what I can say, because it's all about the experience. You know, I mean, if we could explain exactly what meditation is and what we get from this, and we could write it down and just pass it on, and it would be easy. You know, here would be the way to do it. But it's not. Everybody's got their little personal mountains to overcome, their problems when it comes to meditation. And when you do Tai Chi, you get to know, I mean, every inch of your body, every toenail, every fingertip, everything, because you know you're doing this thing about the weight and the moving, and if one of your fingers is a little bit bent and out of place, you notice it, you know. So you know your body so well, and then you can get into the mind thing, and it's so difficult talking about that stuff, you know. You just have to experience it. When people start talking about it, they do start to sound a little bit kind of like hippies who've had a really weird floaty trip.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the way it is. Just experience it. You know?
So would you say you're a very spiritual person? Obviously, with the Rastafarianism and with Tai Chi, do both those very different disciplines, do they appeal to you in a spiritual kind of way?
Yeah, they really do. and not a religious way. I believe in God without religion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't believe there's a God that went zoom and created the earth. I just believe there is something greater than us. We don't have to work it out.
Mm.
You know, when we do Tai Chi and we meditate, we can experience, we can feel our relationship with the trees. We can feel our relationship with the other animals. I mean, every living thing, if you look at every living thing on the planet, I will never do exactly the same thing as a cow. Feel the same way as a cow or a tree or a spider. But one thing we all have in common is the life force. We all breathe, we all need oxygen. And that's what we're doing when we do Qi. That's why the Chinese like to do it underneath trees, because they like to pull Qi down from the trees. Mm-hmm. And scientists have proved it now, that there is this buildup of oxygen and energy around the leaves and trees. This is why we don't want to chop them all down. And, you know, scientists have scientific words for it, but the Chinese for thousands of years have called it Qi. Mm-hmm. And we have that inside us. We breathe it all the time. Mm. You know, a Western scientist would say, don't chop down the trees because they do this with oxygen and they provide, I don't know what the theory is exactly. But people that practice, I guess there's a term, yogic breathing, deep breathing, understand that. Yes, it is a kind of spiritual thing without being religious. You know, I don't know if you know, I mean, I practice yoga as well, and not so much, but I practice yoga as well. I don't know if you know what yoga means, the word yoga.
A union.
Union with self, or union with God. Now, some people, my twin sister, who's a kind of diehard Jehovah's Witness, hates that. How can you have a union with God? God is almighty, God is supreme. But their philosophy is just, God is inside us. God is, is what connects us to the trees and everything else. This is the life force. Yeah? It's not a crazy theory in a sense, because we know we all need this oxygen. Yeah. So when you're doing yoga, you're doing the same thing as Tai Chi. You are overcoming the body. That's why you stretch it, so you can be completely relaxed, to get in touch with your breathing, and then relax your mind. Actually, one of the things I haven't told you is that, you know, Chen Jiago was started by somebody called Chen Wanting. I don't exactly know the year, but it was just the end of the Ming Dynasty. Before him, there was somebody called Bodhidharma or Dharma, who was a yoga teacher, and he left India, and he saw Buddhists playing drums and chanting and chanting and chanting. And he had this idea. He said this was all kind of creating a kind of religion. He said, no, you don't have to do any of that, just silence. And he founded Zen Buddhism. Zen in Japanese just means quiet. In China, it's called Chan Buddhism. It just means quiet Buddhism. He said, you don't need books, you don't need big ideas, you don't need a lot of philosophy. Just sit quietly with yourself and you'll get to know yourself. And it's a bit of a long story, but I'm going to kind of paraphrase it. He comes out of China, out of India. He goes to China, Guangzhou. He goes to the Chinese embassy, literally the Chinese emperor, sorry. And the Chinese emperor says to him, do you have a philosophy? And he said, yes, I have a philosophy. He said, what's your philosophy? He said, my philosophy is no philosophy. That's where we get this term, things are Zen-like, you know. and then he goes to the Shaolin Temple. And not only does he found Zen Buddhism, but he also starts Kung Fu. He gives them some movements to do, which are Tai Chi-like. They weren't called Tai Chi at the time. And then, again, I'm really paraphrasing. I'm really, jumping time zones. And then a few years later, when they were being attacked by the government, he said, speed up all these movements and they become fighting. Now, that was a couple of thousand years ago. A few hundred years ago, at the end of the, sorry, my years might be wrong, but at the end of the Ming Dynasty, Chen Wanting is leaving the army, and he wants to go back to the original slow martial arts. And that's when he founds this new thing that we call Tai Chi. So the word Tai Chi, in one sense, and the forms that we do, are pretty modern, only a few hundred years old. But the roots of it go back thousands of years, but it wasn't formulated. until Chen Wanting in Chen Jiago came up with Chen Tai Chi. Only people with the name Chen practice this martial art until somebody called Yang Luchan was the first non-Chen person to practice it. And when we do Chen Tai Chi, you don't see Chen Tai Chi much. Having said that, there's a couple of good schools in Manchester.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't see it much because we are slow and then we fast. We're slow and then we fast. And we're very low. You have to overcome this pain in your muscle when you start it on your thigh muscles. Yang Luchan saw that and he said, I want to make another Tai Chi that's easier. So he said, stand up and take away the fast movement and just keep it slow. And that's the Tai Chi, the Yang style. You see all the old people doing. You know, that's the one they say is for health, and the government kind of in China kind of encourage it because it's not martial. And
it doesn't cause trouble.
Yeah. But then from that came Sun Tai Chi and Wu Tai Chi and all these other family Tai Chi. But it started from Chen Tai Chi. So it's really interesting when you know the history of it and you understand that it comes from yoga.
India is a cradle of spirituality.
Yes. Same breathing techniques, same principles about being relaxed, same thing about overcoming the body to then deal with the mind. And the same thing when it comes to spirituality, not religious, not denominationally religious, but just getting in touch with yourself. You have to remember it's yourself, not yourself. Your two separate words, self.
Yeah.
We don't have a spirit. This is the way I like to think of it. We don't have a spirit, and we're not bodies that have a spirit. We are spirits that have bodies.
That's a great way of looking at it.
And I'm talking about the meditation side of Tai Chi now. If you really want to get to the high level, you have to stop eating meat. Because what happens is you relax your mind and you think, I'm free, I'm relaxed here now. I'm at one with the trees, and then you go, yeah, but I'm part of a meat industry. And it holds you. You know it's wrong. You know it's, And I always say to people, my favorite, have you seen my little vegan film on YouTube? Vegans, we are the vegans and we live the life. The quote I love about that is vegans are trying to do the least harm and the most good. So I say to people, look, I drive a car. Sometimes when I drive a car, I'm killing insects. I play football, killing insects when you play football. We kill them accidentally all the time. It's about the intention. You'll never see me intentionally killing them. Not even, so this may sound like a weird thing to do. Look at this. I have one of these in every room.
To catch the flies.
Well, you've got to be good to catch a fly with. I just open the door for flies. But this is for spiders or big things if they're getting in your way. Most of the time I leave them. But if I see them and they're in danger or, they're in a position, you just take it and you can just move them to another place.
Even though there was a gadget, I would just use a cup.
Yeah, well, this is because you can do this from a long distance if you want to.
Oh, no, I mean, it's really cool. What an amazing thing. Yeah.
Got one in every room. My neighbour the other day, she's complaining about the spiders in the house. I bought her one as a present. She went, I love it. Just try to do no harm. You can't be perfect.
No,
you can't be perfect. And when I'm doing Tai Chi as well, my teacher, sometimes I make a mistake and he say to me, how does that feel? And I go, oh, there's a little bit there. And he said, we can't be perfect. He said, even me, sometimes I make a mistake and you just carry on. That's the point of it as well, that you don't start blaming yourself because you will never get 100% perfection.
Because, again, it's a trigger for the monkey mind, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes. You start thinking about it there.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant, Benjamin. That's a really great interview.
Cool. To be honest, I mean, martial arts, all good martial arts should be about the way you conduct yourself in life. You should be relaxed. You should be able to If you can change something for the better, you do it. If you can't, you've got to accept it.